Hello, hello. How is everyone doing? If you hear in the background, I actually just got a book delivery, so unfortunately, their box is very heavy and it's getting pulled inside as we speak. Okay, how is everyone doing today? I always like to start off my lives with the basic question, what are you reading today? As I wait for my co-host, aha, let's see, from the UK, so we have a bit of a time difference. I'm gonna lower this down.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Can you
How
hear
are
me?
you?
Yeah, I'm good. Got it working, which is always a good start.
Yes. Well, glad you figured that out. It's not as terrifying if when you're getting used to starting out with lives as some people, you know, once you get the idea of it, you're good.
Excellent. Excellent. So how are you
Perfect.
anyway? You okay?
I am doing well. I was just kind of mentioning to the people who are logging on early that in the background I had some noise because I just got a delivery of some books, which is always a great feeling when you're an author to get your author's copies coming in.
Yeah, your own ones. Yeah, nothing more exciting.
Well, how I like to start these off is I always like, well, just give you a reference in case you don't know. Lives, some people can log in on your end who are your followers and vice versa. So because we may have viewers that don't know each other, I like to make sure you do your author's pitch and tell what you write, why you're an author, what you love, etc., so on, and I'll do the same, and then we go from there and just talk about wherever the day leads.
Cool. Yeah. So what you want me to just say what I write? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. What is your
I've
author's
had a bit.
name and what are your books?
Okay. So my name is Jon Cronshaw. Both of those are spelt in weird ways, so that's always helpful. I think I've had a bit of a zigzag career in terms of writing because I've always written in the kind of science fiction fantasy umbrella. Um, Started off doing post-apoc. Um, First novel I wrote, which never got published or anything, was space opera. Then I did some game lit, and now I'm full in fantasy. So my kind of most popular series is one called the Ravenglass Chronicles, which is a 22 novella high fantasy series, kind of inspired by the tarot. Um, so that took me a couple of years to write, and then my latest one is Dawn of
Ooh.
Assassins, which is a spin-off. It's set in the same universe as my Ravenglass Chronicles. Like my plan is to set all of my fantasy stuff in the same universe. So there was just a town in the Ravenglass Chronicles, which was really grubby, a lot of thieves, a lot of terrible people, and I thought I really want to write more in that place. So that's what I did with this. So that's I think that's it. I've written loads, and
Okay, how
I
many
think I've
have
got
do you have in total? You said 20-ish books of your novella series. How many do you have in total of all your Oh,
yeah,
you
it's
have to
at
start
least
counting.
30. Yeah, at least
Wow.
30. I know I've got let me think, six, seven, eight novels out. Yeah. I've got a few short story collections. I've got a novel that's with the editor right now, and I've got two more that I've got first drafts for. So yeah, lots of stuff kind of at different points in the process as well. So yeah.
I love that. That is fantastic. I like because when I do these lives, sometimes I'll have an author who has either I've even had some that are just working on their first one and don't even have it published yet, all the way to where you are, where you're running laps around some of us who are still trying to catch up to your numbers. Wow, 30, that's pretty cool. I love that. That is super exciting. And that means I have a lot of questions for you because you're an expert.
No, I'm not. I still feel like even though I've done however many books it is, like I still feel like I'm a newbie. I still feel like I'm scrambling every time I try and write. It's crazy, but I think that's part of the fun, isn't it? It's like it's always a new experience. I don't get that kind of complacency of like, yay, I know what I'm doing now. It's like, no, like every time I think I've cracked it, it's like a new thing gets unlocked and like,
Love it.
oh no, I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, let me do my side of the pitch and then we'll go because I do have a bunch of questions already kind of percolating in the back of my head for you about your stuff, and I want to return to that cover because it was fantastic. I love that cover. Okay, but for anybody who may not know me, Katharine E. Wibell is my author name, and I'm a epic fantasy author of several series. 3 actually right now. The first one is the Incarne Saga. Kind of have my fancy little reverse poster in the background so I can do this thing. But there are 4-book series, and they are a new adult shifter fantasy set in a kingdom on the verge of war, and both the humans and the shapeshifters have to decide if they can put aside their differences to work together and fend off their threat. So that was my debut series. I really loved it. It was a fun learning challenge because I am that author who is the last one to figure anything out. So lots of stumbling on my face for that series, but I do enjoy it, and I'm glad I have it out there. It's my only complete series. Now, my other 2 I have, one goes to the young adult side of things, and that is the Jed Chronicles, and that one's set in a set in a multiverse with 12 magical worlds, and it's a kind of a free-for-all of all sorts of mythological beasts, beings, creatures. I just had a heyday with it, and I'm hoping to push the 3rd one out by the end of the year, crossing fingers. And then kind of going where you were talking about earlier about these longer novella series, that's kind of what I'm challenging myself for my adult dark fantasy Viking fantasy series. So I have my first 6 out. I'm expecting it to end up being 16 in length. So not the full 20 as you have, but, kind of close there. But I have the first 6 out, and actually, as of Monday night, the first one of those turned into an audiobook, and that's my first audiobook ever. So I'm super excited about branching into that area.
And you've got a cool narrator. Your narrator's very good.
Very jealous. I think he's yes, I love his voice. But yeah, so those are my series, and they range again from young adult kind of adventure fantasy. One of the terms I learned about recently is noble bright. So the fun side of fantasy to all the way to what is more the grimdark side of fantasy. So it kind of peters around depending on what you like.
Yeah, no, I'm quite similar actually. I think my Ravenglass Chronicles is definitely in that kind of noble, bright, clean, fun fantasy. Lots of and multiverse stuff going on as well.
I love it.
Dawn of Assassins is what I would describe as kind of grimdark light. So it's not quite full Joe Abercrombie, everyone dies and gets mutilated in the process. It's a bit lighter, a bit more fun, but it's still dealing with some dark themes.
Oh, yes. Well, I think it's fun to offer, but this is my personal opinion, and again, don't necessarily take it because I have arguments against this, but as an author, I enjoy offering a selection of different type of fantasy for readers, because there's readers who one thing is their thing and maybe another one isn't. On the other hand, it gets confusing for marketing. So for marketing purposes, It's like, you want happy and fun and adventure, or do you want to get kind of really gritty and Game of Thrones-esque?
Well, I mean, that's the issue I've got with my marketing is it's like, I tell people I'm a fantasy author, but then most of my novels are not fantasy. So, there's the post-apocalyptic stuff and the game stuff. So, yeah, it is a weird one. And I think, it's, I don't know if you find, I think you might, based on the fact that you are you're not genre hopping, but you are definitely following different points in the fantasy thing of it's just, you've got to write what's interesting, really. And I think sometimes the sticking to the same thing all the time it can get a little bit boring. I don't know if you agree with that or.
Yes, and that is true. It is fun to kind of be able to broach into different types of fantasy. And for me, my series are, at least at the moment, I haven't figured out how to put them in the same universe, but they're all different universes. So the magic systems are different, et cetera, so on. But you writing multiple series with different vibes within the same universe is interesting to me, because what I've heard before is most people who, once they find their niche, create this universe, but it's more or less in that same, at least the age bracket. So it's kind of interesting that you're doing, as you said, the noble, bright, happy to maybe the lighter, grimdark, or a heavy dark fantasy side. So
yeah, don't follow what I do.
Don't listen.
Yeah.
Don't do what we do. Just.
No. No,
So,
but yeah, I mean,
oh yeah, sorry, go.
my plan is eventually is that I'm creating this universe where I could tell middle grade. I could tell like just so many different stories and different media and things like that. So, yeah, it's just like my next series is going to be. I mean, it's almost a bit like what you're doing with the Viking stuff. It is that like Viking feel, Nordic kind of Anglo-Saxon mashup that I'm going for with the next one. So, yeah, same universe but different again, different audience.
I like it. I like it. And it's nice thing once you set your universe and kind of, especially geographically, if you are sticking with the same kind of world map, it probably at least gives you some basis, even though you're branching into different sub niches. I don't even know. Are there like sub niches? But
Yes, always.
but no, that's neat. And yes, I highly advise the Nordic stuff because I love it. I'm obsessed about it. My whole office is scattered around with Viking memorabilia because
Awesome.
I do love that. But I want to
How
know.
do you feel about Horned Helmet?
Oh yeah. Well, no, because Vikings didn't have horn helmets, but I do have a Viking helmet. I have one right over there, and then I also have my fantasy Valkyrie helmet on that side. So
Awesome.
depending on the day, armored
Beats
helmet
a
or
book
just the
pro.
Viking Valkyrie fantasy, I love it. But let me ask you before we get into your fantasy, since that's how you moved into. You started with, you said space opera, and you decided to move over. So what made you decide to move over? Was it just because you wanted to, or just I'm curious about your stage one of
Yeah, I don't know. So I had this story bubbling in my head for years that was this space opera thing, and it was my first project, and I wanted to do basically Game of Thrones in space.
Ooh.
Now, George R.R. Martin wrote several short stories, several novels. He wrote loads of TV shows, and then he wrote Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to do that as my first project, and it was a failure, an epic, absolute failure.
I'm sorry.
So 13 POV characters sprawling, just a mess. But I finished it, and I think I learned a lot from doing that because I went on. In the UK, we've got this thing called Arvon, which is like these writing retreats, and you go for a week and you spend time with authors who will teach you how to write, and they'll basically critique your work.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the authors who were teaching, there was Jeff Ryman, who he's won Hugo's, Nebulas, I think, and he wrote a book called Air, which I really liked, and I was like, oh, Jeff Ryman's doing a thing, I'll go to that. And he savaged my work, and it was the most heartbreaking thing ever. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned so much from it. And what tip I came away with was, okay, just try and write something that is not necessarily in the genre you want to write in, that is one point of view, that has one adventure, has a clear, follows a nice structure, is just an easy story. And so I did that. I basically made a list of genres that I wanted to write in, and post-apocalyptic was one of them. And so I wrote the book that ended up being my first published novel, which was Wizard of the Wasteland. And that was 5 years ago. So, hang on. Yeah, so I've just released the 5-year anniversary hardback, and it looks sweet.
Ooh.
So even though they're post-apoc, still with the fantasy tropes, wizard, knight, king, cleric, and of course I didn't know much about the post-apocalyptic market, so I didn't realise that a lot of post-apocalyptic books have kind of super military, ex-military kind of gun nut kind of people, and we're in the UK. We a few people have guns and they're just for shooting rabbits or whatever. So it's like we don't have the same gun culture.
Yes.
So when I sent the book to beta readers, they were just like, "No, you don't put bullets into a shotgun." Okay, right. noted.
See, that's, we
So yeah,
love
I
our
think
beta readers to catch things that we don't realize are incorrect.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought, whatever. I thought end of the world, not a lot that can go wrong with technology and things like that. When I'm dealing with space opera, it's like had someone who knew physics and things like that, just to kind of check my workings out. But with Post-Apoc, it was just like, right, I'm keeping it simple. And even then, I couldn't get guns right, but that was fine because they were right in the book when it came out. So yeah.
I get it. No, that's really neat. But like, yeah, so you jumped like some big genres. Again, I've always kept in my little niche, which is epic fantasy, because yeah, I like and I enjoy sci-fi, and I enjoy the post-apocalyptic kind of vibe books, but I'm not comfortable writing them because I know fantasy. I know mythology.
Mm.
That's my I know old warfare, but yes, if you got me to talking about modern warfare, I would have to do a lot of research. And not to say that I don't do a lot of research for my fantasy, but that would just add an extra level of background stuff just because I'm not familiar with it.
Have you ever had the comment of you write fantasy, so you don't need to do a lot of research? Have you heard that one? That's a
I've heard other people get that, but thankfully I haven't. But I'm also very upfront about my research I've done today is dot dot
yeah,
dot. And
yeah.
like for instance, the Dark Viking fantasy series that I've working on, I've spent probably the most research on that series because I really wanted to keep at least the culture of the Viking era people pretty historically accurate and just set them into their mythology, which I wanted to keep very accurate to their mythos. And so I have just a bookshelf dedicated to just Nordic history lore and their mythology and research artifacts and all that kind of stuff because I wanted to keep it very real and just immersive experience for that series. But yeah, you do a lot of research in fantasy. I think if you're
Yeah.
writing, I think now again, this is me stereotyping another genre, so I'm going to get slapped in the face for saying this, but if you're writing like a biography or autobiography, I feel like autobiography, let's put that, autobiography, you probably have to do less research than maybe fantasy or sci-fi because you're writing about your life, so things that you actually grew up and know around versus this. But again, I could be incorrect. I've never tried to write an autobiography, so again, I can be drastically incorrect.
Let's
Yeah,
assume that
sorry,
everyone needs to do some kind of research. That's it. So what do you do then to do your research? How do you go about that? Is it online, or do you use books, or go to museums or anything like that?
Everything and anything. Just because, again, going back to the Viking one, because it's just easy to reference since that's the latest draft I finished was from one of those novellas, and so that's in my head right now. But no, yeah, I have, again, the whole bookshelf of, now I use it as reference from Icelandic sagas and the Eddas to, again, the books, historical books on that era. But Google is king. Google and doing research on the computer. It's just so easy sometimes when I have a quick thing of, okay, how do I spell this word? I know the word, but I want to make sure it's spelled appropriately. So, doing some Google searches that way are very helpful. And I do watch documentaries or, some of those kind of History Channel and all that kind of stuff when it comes to that people of that era. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same with ancient Egypt stuff. I've been geeking out about that for years, and I got to actually go to Egypt last year, and it was amazing. And it just does not compare to like going around a place like Karnak compared to watching it on a YouTube thing. It's like it's amazing. So if you get a chance to go to any of the places, or just go. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to Iceland or anything like that.
I would
Like,
love to do a Scandinavian,
yeah,
Icelandic, tour one day. That is on my to-do list, but no, I have not.
yeah. I think anything like that is good. I mean, we're lucky where we live. We live in a place called Morecambe in England, and it's on the coast, on the west coast. And I was talking to my wife about this earlier, actually, but there's on the bluffs overlooking Heysham, which is a village nearby, you've got Anglo-Saxon graves, which are like these open kind of grave pot things that are on the cliffs. And then inside the church, they've got a like a hogback thing that displays. It's got carvings of scenes from Viking sagas in. So there's a lot of Viking stuff that's gone on. We actually, well, because of COVID, that went away, but we used to have the Viking festival every year. So you got to go and do all the old Viking crafts and see all the boats, and yeah, it's great. So we've got kind of a lot of history around just around here, which yeah, it's quite
So
exciting.
I'm visiting you next, is what I hear. But I have a comment, and going back to the autobiographies, one comment popped up and saying that I have a terrible memory. My autobiography would require a ton of research. So yeah, see again, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, so I can only guess. But no,
Yeah.
I'm going back to that. No, I love ancient Egypt so much that I have a life-size representation of Pharaoh Tutankhamun's sarcophagus in my living room, because ancient Egypt was like a passion when I was young. I, again, started with probably Egypt and Greco-Roman and has moved to the Norse mythology, but I think that is fascinating, and I would love to go visit at some point too. I need more time to travel.
Yeah. I've got a few things on my list for sure that I've not been to yet, but I need to go to Rome and I need to kind of explore some of the Greek islands and stuff, because there's a lot around there that is just like, yep, need to see that stuff. And then like Machu Picchu and Cusco and things like that. So anything, Angkor Wat as well, anything like that where it's at least 1,000 years old and
Oh yes, that's so awesome.
maybe has some what do you call it? I kind of like, and this is great story fuel. I don't buy into it, but like the kind of pseudo history stuff, especially that you get around the pyramids and things like that, where it's clearly nonsense, and there's stuff with aliens and I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I read a book about the Great Pyramid, how it was an ancient power plant. It's
okay,
yeah.
I like it. I can see that. The whole going back to the sun
fuel.
worship. Okay.
Yeah, doesn't matter if it's true to me. It's just kind of sparks the imagination, and that's why it's great for me. Yeah,
and that's what a good fantasy author is always looking for, that next spark of imagination. But I do want to go and talk about, you were saying that your current series deals with assassins. So
yeah.
What drew you to that kind of topic? Did you watch something and be like, I can write an assassin, a better assassin than whatever I just watched or read, or was that just something that was curious?
I think I don't know. Like I think this will end up being like a therapy session or something. But I think there's a part of us. I think there's like Jung talks about this idea of the shadow part of all of us, and I suppose it's about confronting that idea. And what I've learned doing this assassin book is I don't know if I'm that good at actually writing assassin books, because my main character, he does not want to do it at all. He's like a completely reluctant character, does not want to be an assassin, does not want to kill, and he does everything in his power not to have to do that. And so that's kind of a little bit more interesting to me, at least, is the idea that you kind of being forced into something you don't want to do, and the kind of, can you get out of it, and how much are you kind of dictated by outside forces, and how much are you your own character, I suppose.
I think those are more dynamic characters than having a character that's an assassin that's like, I like what I do. I'm like, well, good for you. But, having that, that inner conflict, and it could be, in any kind of situation when you're writing a character, an inner conflict is always more interesting than a character that doesn't have an inner conflict.
Well, I think one of my favourite series is the Farseer series by Robin Hobb. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've not read that one, no.
Okay, so the first book in that is called Assassin's Apprentice. Now, what I've done with Dawn of Assassins is nothing like that book, but the idea of the reluctant assassin, the person who is kind of put into this life, doesn't want it. Like that really appeals to me. The that story, that series is what made me want to be a fantasy writer, to be honest, because
Oh, neat.
it was the first. I'd read fantasy stuff when I was a kid that was like the um, kind of Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
and this was the first one that I read that was really character driven, and it was really heartbreaking. And I reread it recently, and it still kind of got me there. So yeah, it's
So
it's
this is
brilliant.
Assassin's Apprentice.
Yeah, Assassin's Apprentice.
Oh, I
So
have a comment that's saying that's so good. So obviously, some other viewers here enjoy
oh
that
yeah,
series too.
yeah.
I'll have to put that on my to read list.
Give yourself some time to read it because it's one of those
But
epic fantasies that's
I love it.
a million words or something. But yeah, it's tremendous. So yeah, I don't know that the yeah that's I think you've asked me a difficult question really because I I feel uneasy about it because I don't like the idea of murder at all. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think many people do.
No.
Um, but there's something about the characters like because they're a pair of thieves and they remind me a lot of people I grew up with because I grew up on like a really dodgy uh, kind of low income council estate in Wolverhampton, which is a rough part of the Midlands. Very not even working class, kind of a lot of unemployment, a lot of drugs,
Hmm.
and so a lot of the characters in that book are not people that I knew, but they're kind of based on those characters and things like that, inspired by them. Um, and so it was really interesting for me, at least, to kind of get into that darker realm, that grittier thing after doing a series which was following a princess who,
Yeah.
made friends with wyverns and things like that. So yeah, I
I
felt it
love
was a good
both sides
reaction
of
to that.
it. I love both sides of that. But yeah, for the darker kind of fantasy to the grimdark side, it is always interesting that those questions of can you have a good character do bad things, and to what extent can that good character do bad things before they become a bad character, and that kind
Mm,
of that morally gray area is very popular and fascinating right now for characters where, be it they're forced into it, not of their own accord, or, you know, they choose it and then have regrets. It is always that interesting, more dynamic thing that does kind of lend to that darker fantasy realm of genres.
yeah, well, I'm seeing the kind of arc of my main character almost like I don't know if you saw Breaking Bad, but the way that the Walter White went on this show, really downward trajectory with his character. Like I want that, but I want another dimension where there's also redemption. There's also the desire to um, kind of get past it, but it's always pulling you back. So I suppose it's like you've got the elements of Breaking Bad, Sopranos, and Godfather and things like that, kind of influencing this as well. So yeah, probably not
That
not
makes sense.
necessarily fantasy, but yeah.
No, I mean, again, those are those kind of dynamic characters that do draw people's attention because they have that extra layer. Now, your prior series, you were talking about princesses and wyverns. So, can you just tell me, like, that first book, the premise of the first book, and the name of that one, please, because of the fantasy wyvern?
So yeah, so that is the Ravenglass Chronicles, which is
Ravenloft.
just
Okay.
a big overarching story. So the first book of that is called The Magician. Now the series you can get the complete series as a box set for 99 cents on Amazon or on Kindle Unlimited. So that's the best way to do it. But that is basically about it's a high fantasy coming of age story. Um, princess, she comes of age and she is put into basically she's got to go through an arranged marriage with
Mhm.
just the worst. Toad is like a toad, this character.
Oh, no.
um, 4 times her age, just an awful man.
Hmm.
Um, and she has a magical awakening, and this magical awakening leads to her accidentally killing someone. And so
Oh.
while this blows over, she's got to leave her house, and her wyvern friend says, "Hey, go and find sanctuary with these people. They'll look after you until it happens." And it's like this quasi-mystical kind of military order called the Guardians, and she arrives, and instead of claiming sanctuary, she decides to join them, and then the adventures go from there. So
I love it. I love
yeah,
that. I
so
love
it's about
anything.
her turning from a kind of naive, bratty princess to someone worthy of being an empress. Yeah, so big growth arc in this story, I would say.
Oh, I love that kind of self-empowerment stories where, you know, you come out and maybe the world is dictating where you are supposed to be, but then you find your own power, be it true magic or just inner self-worth, and then you go from there. So those are also kind of fun stories. And I do enjoy those, but no, I like that. And wyverns, I have a fond place in my heart for wyverns because I am a person who loves anything in the dragon realm and their relatives, and so wyverns are fascinating.
Yes. I have wyverns that have the ability to manipulate human emotions. So they've got a
Oh
kind
no,
of
oh
psychic
yes.
power which can get magnified, and they can enslave humans if they so desire.
Oh, that's a very that's a very Fey thing. After talking to a lot of people who write Fey lore, you know, that whole manipulation of emotions is kind of one of those things that people don't really think about how terrifying it is until, you know, you not experience it. Hopefully you don't experience it, but read
Mm.
about it and, you know, see it on, you know, film or media or whatever, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah, well, I think there's something quite frightening about losing freedom and losing your
Mm-hmm.
kind of ability to make choices and decisions. So I think that yeah, that's like a real kind of primal thing, isn't it?
Oh yes. Oh definitely. But wow. It's okay. So the Raven Glass Chronicles?
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna remember these so I can start putting them again in my wish list, because that's now how I'm organizing how I remember all these books that we talk about and can read them forward. So, Assassin's Apprentice, Ravenglass Chronicles. Okay, see, I'm gonna remember. I'm very bad with names, so I'm gonna repeat it like 15 times. But let me ask you, um, so being a writer for and having a whole plethora of work, are you someone who sells? Are you one of those authors who are exclusive through Amazon, or do you sell wide? How can people find your work?
I
Let's.
am exclusive through Amazon, and that's partly because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered with all these different dashboards. Um,
I
but
understand.
you know, like part of my strategy has been with things like the Ravenglass Chronicles. I mean, we're going to talk book marketing now, but to sell cheap but make money on the page reads. So that is what I do with my Ravenglass Chronicles. Is it's a massive box set for 99¢, but that it pushes it up the charts, which encourages people on Kindle Unlimited to read it, which is where I make my money. So
Oh no,
yeah,
I'm with you, and as one of our viewers saying, I feel seen. Yeah, so you know that whole Amazon exclusive right now. It's yes, there is that ease thing. And for me, I chose it because it seemed at the time fairly popular. Now I've realized, depending on where you're on the world, some people it's easier to get, especially if you're the ebook person, some of the other options. But as just my own personal experience, you know, being an author who is, at least with the ebooks through Kindle Unlimited, that's my bread and cheese. That is my the main course of my income right now has been through that aspect versus like the print versions. And now that I'm just entering into audio, that may change too, but it always has pulled me to continue to stay with Amazon and all those perks. Though I will admit, trying to debate if I should take in that time and energy to figure out how to get my print versions into Ingram Sparks so that I can have them in the Barnes and Noble and have them in Nook and Kobo and all these other ones that I don't have them in, and just do that for the print versions. But I don't know if it's
mm,
worth it. Time,
that's the
energy,
trouble.
is it worth it? Figuring out a whole new platform, having everything redesigned, because if you don't know, they have slightly different formatting, so it means everything has to be reformatted, and that's just
Mm.
so much work.
work and time. This is the thing. It's like this. There's only so many hours in the day, and then you've got
Yeah.
to get the designer to do more stuff. And I don't know. Like I sell, I would say 0.1% of my sales are physical print books.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of my stuff is always ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it kind of falls. So it's like, is it worth it? Is it worth that time and effort? And at the moment, it isn't. But I do feel that need eventually to wean myself off the Amazon exclusivity, because it's that, like, if Amazon went tomorrow, then I'd have to start again. I mean, I've got my mailing list, but they've all come through Amazon, so I need to diversify eventually. That is my plan.
I think that's the way, at least I want to try, and maybe I'll take one of my series and just start with one and see how it goes before investing all that time and, again, money, because you have to not rebrand, but get whole new covers, because thankfully Amazon got hardcovers now, and that's fantastic, and I've got into those, but Ingram Sparks has dust jackets, which means whole new formatting for your covers, and why can't it be simple? This is an author complaining. I apologize. Why can't it be simple? But oh man, but no, I really like working with Amazon right now. It's something, but since again I'm familiar with it, I continue on. I have a question popping up saying thoughts on ads. Example, Amazon ads targeting the paperbacks versus ebooks. Do you run ads for your books? Let me just start off with that, and then we'll try to get there.
Yes, I do. I target. I've had mixed success with Amazon ads. I've found what works for me is having really good targets, and they need to be above the rank of 5,000 for a start in the store. They need to be targeted for the ASINs, and they need to be really similar to what you're writing. And then you need to put about 20 ads into a thing, and you need to have fixed bids, have them pretty high, so maybe like 50 cents per bid, and let them run for a bit. You'll start getting the things in, and then drop your bid down, and they seem to run that way. So that's worked for me. But I struggle scaling them, like really struggle scaling them. So that's great. I could sell maybe a few copies a day with that, but you can't do a full-time income with that. BookBub ads, I have found them to be throwing money down a pit. So I did a lot of testing on those.
I've never done BookBub, so I was curious. I used it. I was like, I have not tried.
The ones that are the pay, not the feature deal, but the ones where you're actually paying for the whatever, the pay-per-click ads. Yeah, I haven't got those to work for me. I know some authors who've made them work very well. So it just depends. Facebook ads, however, yeah, they've worked great for me, and I continue to use them, and I think they've given me a full-time income with my writing. So yeah, I like Facebook ads. They've worked really well.
No, I'm kind of with you. Years ago when I was starting off, but I was also, I will admit, starting off, and my series was, I think I started running ads when I just had my second book out. So I didn't have a backlog, and it was a short series. And so one of the tips and tricks cause I took some coursework on trying to figure out how to run ads as an author. And it's easier to run ads on a first book of a long series because you get that buy-in. So even if that book doesn't pay off because they buy through rate is decent enough, it all pays off and you earn profit. It's one of those kind of long games. And there's lots of strategies in it. But I have discovered that Amazon early on, I kind of was getting it to work, and I stopped it because I only had 2 books and I wanted to get more out before I was paying to play that game, more or less. And by the time I tried to get back in, I could not figure it out. All the algorithms were different. All the bids went up, and I've not been successful in that. So at the moment, we'll always probably go back periodically and try again, but kind of stop the Amazon and focus right now on Facebook, which seems to work for me. It's just an easier thing to maneuver, and you have a lot more play with those ads because you can put more text and images, and there is a way where what I run, if you ask me the term, I can't remember it, but it's one of their types of ads where you can put in different images and different text, and the algorithm mashes them up and kind of spits them out to the people they think in the best order they think will attract a person.
Okay, yeah.
And that seems to work well for me because then, I'm having the algorithm do half that. You help me out. But yes, finding the right target is a good key thing. It is exceedingly important, especially for Amazon ads, because those targets will make or break. And you just have to play because another author will come out, a new book will come out, a new genre, something will change the trajectory of what people are interested in, and you'll just periodically have to refresh, retest. That's the way of ads. It's not going to be golden for eternal. Carousel, no, It's not carousel. That one, sorry, someone's asked carousel for Facebook. That's when you have multiple pictures that someone can kind of slide around. This one's a style of ad where
it's like the creative. It's got creative in the word, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, something with the creative, but maybe I'll do a post about this some point this week on my platform, but because I can't remember the term, but it allows you can put in, I think, up to 10 things, and they could be videos or photos, and then like X amount of paragraphs and X amount of taglines, and it will select the one picture or the one video and the one blurb that it thinks will match with that particular person. It's a bizarre algorithm thing, and it does work, but you have to kind of be on top of it, because if something, an image or blurb is not working, take it out and it'll just readjust and force the ones that work, in front of more people, which is what you want. This is why you can take courses on this subject, hours and hours. There's so much to talk about on ads, and what I took was Mark Dawson's Ads for Authors. It is an expensive course to buy in, but it is exceedingly in depth, and they always update their stuff. So once you're in and get that package, anytime they do an update, you get all those updates for free. You don't have to pay on. They actually give some freebies, because once they realized how this clock app, TikTok, has revolutionized the book world, they added a whole free course just on how to do this. And they're in depth, like hours and hours and weeks of hours. Like I had to pause for that and realize I need to do some more work, and I'll get back to some of these other aspects of it because it is very in depth. But that's for ads.
Yeah. So, with your Facebook ads, I mean, where are you sending traffic?
I send them to Amazon. I like that, to the direct link. For the most part, I have run ads before to try to get them to sign up to like a newsletter, but I send my traffic trying to get them to Amazon, because I just want them to be the shortest step of interest buy without having to do a run around with the website. I see the perks of being on a website, but I like just trying to keep it as efficient as possible.
I've got a mixture. I like the newsletter sign up thing. That's worked well. And with series, if you've got book series, targeting the series page rather than the product page, because it's the best kind of real estate on Amazon in terms of, like, there's nothing else on there really. There's no other ads. There's no other like also boughts. It's just your stuff. And there's a nice little button, I think it's in the top right corner, that is like buy entire series. And sometimes that can happen. So targeting that rather than the books themselves, if you've got a longer series, works. But yeah, I've gone for the paid read strategy. So I'm targeting box sets, 99 cents box sets on Facebook. Go straight to the product page. That works well for me. So.
I like it. No, I need to write a few more books to get a few more box sets out. I only have 2. One, because I have that 4 book, and then the first 4 of my novellas are now bundled in and that's what just came in, a box set for, well, they call it omnibus because you have multiple books in it in one print. But I like that because my novellas were just too short, and I didn't want to put them in a print version because they look like a little flip book, and I was just like, that's not, they have their worth, but I didn't want them to look like they don't. So I'm waiting to bundle them in sets of 4 so they actually have more meat on their bones in front of people.
Yeah.
So, but that became tricky because people wanted the print so early on, and I was like, give me a second. I'm working as fast as I can to put these out. I promise. The struggles of being an author. Everybody wants the next book at the end of the last and wants complete series, even when you're starting.
Yeah, I had an ARC reader ask. Yeah, it was when I just sent them the Dawn of the Assassins. Like, oh, when's the next book? It's like, this book hasn't come out yet. It's like, please, I can't even deal with the next book yet. So.
It is that thing, and you're trying to figure out how to keep people's attention because, unfortunately, people's attention span have probably petered down now when we have all this kind of quick, easy access to information. So you're trying to make sure you don't lose people who enjoy your series early on, but you also don't want to destroy the quality of your books trying to rush and put things out. And there are some authors that can do it. They can work the system. They can put out a book a month, and I am, more power to them. I am not that kind of an author. I really try, but I cannot hit that quick turnaround with that mass amount of stuff. So I'm trying. How often do you publish?
See, this is the thing. I know there's some authors who are a book a month, or someone like Lindsay Barocca, where it's like she just seems to like get up and write a book. My last book, Trial of Thieves, took me 9 months. My book, what is it? Night of the Wasteland. First draft of that took me 11 days. So I don't know how long it takes me to write a book, is the short answer. When I was doing the Jed Chronicles, these were novellas, and they would take me between 3 and 6 weeks to get written. And they range from 20 to 25, 30,000 words. And I thought they were quite quick. And then, people were doing the same with novels. So, if you start comparing yourself, it can be a bit, I think you can get into that trap of comparing yourself to other
never
other
compare
authors.
yourself to another author in terms of speed or even followers on certain platforms. I get it. Some authors may have a strong suit in one area, but you have your strong suit somewhere else, and you just have to challenge yourself to be the best you can be, and that's really all you can do is challenge yourself that your next book is better than the last, and challenge yourself to continue to grow and reach new people. And I guess that's kind of the goal of it in the end. Plus,
one of the bits of advice that I heard that was, you compare yourself. You compare yourself to what you were before. You don't compare yourself to other people. But that still doesn't work when it takes 9 months to write a book. When it's, when you just feel that is too long.
I have a story for you, but yes, I have a question that popped up, and I think this pertains to me. But I was asking if we were on Audible. I have my first on Audible as of Monday, but hopefully we'll have more by the end of the year between that series, because my novellas are quicker to turn around, and I do have my other 2 series in the works right now, different stages. But Audible is tricky because I can't put pre-order. I literally have to go through, we go a back-forth approval process with you and your producer, which is your narrator person. And then Audible has to approve, and you never know when it's going to release. It's just, we were waiting, I think, George Blagden's my narrator for this series, and he and I were waiting and checking every day. And he, being in the UK, checks earlier in the day. And we were just like, every morning or every night, I'm like, have you seen it yet? Nope, not yet. Because you never know when it's out. But yes, I do have one. So are you on Audible, or are you just sticking with the print / ebooks right now?
I have some books on Audible, yes. Let me think. I've got a few non-fiction ones, I think. And I've got Black Death Survival, which is a standalone post-apocalyptic novel that I did. And with my Wasteland series, when I first wrote that, I did it in present tense for some reason. So so third person present tense, which is probably quite weird for a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff. And so I ended up rewriting that in third person past tense. But so the first 3 books of that are on Audible, but in that older version with the present tense. So they're out of date versions. If you want to hear an earlier version, you can. The first 3 are on there.
That's the thing. I think you have a power when you're an indie author that if you decide you need to make updates, it's easier for you because you have more control of your product. And so, if you realize, yes, okay, the storyline's good, the character's good, but maybe the tense, like you were saying, was not what that genre needs, you have the power to rewrite and update. And yes, again, there was that time factor and all that, but if it makes it better, that's, that's worth it. So, and other books come out without, updates and different editions periodically. So just say edition 2.0 and say updated. And this is what the update is. We switched the tense to make it more enthralling to the reader.
Yeah, well, hopefully it was. I mean, because I did that to do the box set, in time with that, and that box set has done really well over the past. I think I released it March last year, so it's still selling nicely, that book. So it was definitely worth it for that, and I think it just helps with getting the read through on that book. So yeah.
But I've said this before in different lives, but again, going back to that update thing. And you'll see this happen with people being published through some, especially like the big 4, that when trends change, especially visual trends, because you'll have arguments if you should change book covers, but there are definitely book cover trends that do shift, that every author has a right to kind of choose to either keep with the original or update their stuff and keep with whatever the trend goes. I think I noticed recently, someone correct me, that the Throne of Glass series, which I have not read, but they're about to be reissued in a new cover style, again, trying to follow whatever the publishing houses have determined as the trend.
Yeah, she's probably about 2 years too late, but
it is always interesting trying to figure out that, and other people who take so much time and effort trying to predict where it's going. I'm just a person who's like, yes, I keep, at least for the covers, try to keep them in genre enough, but I want them to be unique enough that they are my style. And maybe that hurts me, maybe it helps me, but I think that goes with, the way I write and the author I am.
Yeah, I think as long as they're, because that's what they are, they're like compact symbols, aren't they? And as long as they communicate what they are, like if you're doing a dark Viking fantasy and you've got little kittens on the cover, I don't know if you have.
Maybe not.
Yeah, then that won't fit. But I think if you kind of just, because that's it, they're just like a little communication thing, aren't they? And especially when you're on something like a Kindle where it's black and white and you've got like a tiny little thumbnail, it's like it has to communicate using that, which is a big ask. So yeah, that's why it's I think it's important to get decent designers, cover designers, if you know in India.
For your designers, I don't know how many you have, how did you choose them? And did they have the big sway on your covers, or did you pretty much tell them, I want this for your covers? Because, I mean, obviously you have different genres, so that may be different for different genres.
Yeah. So Clarissa, who did my covers for my Wasteland stuff, and quite a few she did my Ravenglass covers, she did my Black Death covers, and my Blind Gambit. She's done most of my covers, Clarissa. She's at Yokeler Design, and she did a cover that I thought was amazing. And what was it called? See, I can't remember now. That's how amazing it was. But the cover was amazing anyway, and it was in the genre I was writing. And it was, I just contacted the author and said, who did your cover? I need that artist. And so he put me in touch with her. And then the same thing happened with my Dawn of Assassins cover. Is I kept seeing fantasy covers going, wow, who did that? And yeah, covers by Christian kept coming up. So I went covers by Christian. And yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a piece of art. Right? It's amazing. So yeah, and that thing, it's when you've got a book it's like that's your baby. That's what you're ultimately selling. But the packaging is what gets people in. And unfortunately, there's about 3 or 4 layers of packaging before you actually get to the book. And so you've got the cover, you've got the blurb, you've got the word of mouth, the reviews, and then the look inside.
It's the
If they've got that far,
breadcrumbs that are kind of like pulling the people along.
yeah. So your book, the quality of your book actually sells the next book. You know, it doesn't sell your current book, and that's what gets people, I suppose, to stick with you is if you can write a story that, you know, keeps them interested in what you're doing, to kind of keep revisiting you. But yeah, you need that initial good quality billboard, let's say, to get people in.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think one of my biggest fears, like authors have, like, there's definitely some kind of fears that kind of cross over the whole, you know, I'm not enough feeling, or, you know, the self-comparison with something else, or the self-doubt. That's a big one. But for me, I think my big author fear that I've been thinking about a lot has been the whole, when you've written so many books, your level of writing has hopefully improved by the, you know, wherever you are. Book 30 has to be probably better, like you were saying, the first draft you wrote. So looking back and going back to my first book, I think the story's great. I love it. I absolutely, you know, I adore it. The series, I love it. And people do still seem to enjoy the book. But my other series, where I'm writing right now, I think are to, you know, the next level up. And 5 years from now, going back, and I cringe. I think there's going to be a time where I'm going to cringe because opening up that first book, it's a first book. You have to give yourself some leeway. But the first book and being like, I did write that. But you know, that doesn't detract from the fact that a first book can still be good. It just means you've improved, which is not a bad thing. It's just to what extent and how cringy it is. Have you ever gone back to like your early works and kind of like gone through them and read them, and what were your thoughts?
No. Because
sorry, I'm asking you all the hard questions.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned this with the space opera thing, and honestly, I've not looked at that in several years now. And I spent too much time with it, and I think if I went back to it, even to look at it, I'd be like, I can fix this. I know what to do, and then I'd just go into this thing, and it is an unfixable mess. So it's more kind of self-preservation of like, I know that there's still part of my heart probably in that project. But it's like, it's so broken. It's so broken. And because it was so many POVs, I managed to pull out one of the threads that I thought was good, and that is now a short story. So I managed to get something out of it.
I like that.
But yeah.
Yeah,
took a lot of.
I'm sorry, continue. Yes.
No, I was just saying it took a lot of effort for one short story, really.
I have never challenged myself to write with multiple POVs in a book, so I have considered trying to challenge myself, but instead of like 15, I might start with 2 or 3. Either way, I haven't done it so far. I'm just comfortable with the one because it gets in my head. I'm like, I'm already doing like complex universes with multiple worlds and stuff. I don't know, then splitting, you know, points of view across the ether is gonna help me. Oh man, that would be a little complicated. So kudos for trying, at least. 15 is that's a number to start out with.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's a bit like, you know, if I was decided, you know what, I really want to get into painting, and I've got this idea for the Sistine Chapel. If I can do that as my first thing, then it's like, no. You start. I should have started doing, you know, short stories, drabbles, flash fiction, that kind of thing, and then built up. But of course, we have this idea for a novel in our head, maybe that's been there for years, and I don't think, as new writers, we necessarily have the skills to match our ambition, if that makes sense.
I mean, I agree. And that's the thing is, yes, you're going to have an occasional, you know, author that's just that prodigy. And I'm sure they exist. I know they exist somewhere out there. But it often takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, a lot of practice to get better and to improve, to get yourself to the level you want to be. And hopefully, I think it's best to always challenge yourself to improve, because complacency kills. You want to always challenge yourself to continue to do better. And because if you just become static or stagnant, just ebb and flow, I don't know. I feel like that's probably not a great sign as in your career, but that's just me. I like to challenge myself to move, hopefully, forward. Hopefully.
I'm the same, because I do this full time, and I do it because I love it, and part of the process is learning and improving. And if I wasn't doing that and I stopped loving it, then I may as well just go back to a job I didn't like. So it's like I've got to kind of keep the joy going with this. Otherwise, it's a lot. Like I was reminded the other day of an interview I listened to a few years ago with Kanye West, and he talked about this idea of well, he was talking about basketball players and how, when they go on the court, they have trainers, they have people with ice packs, they have people come in and, giving them massages and all this stuff. And then they have diets and everything. And when you're in a kind of creative space, when you're working mentally, you haven't got any of that. And it's like you've got to kind of look after yourself in that way. And so part of that is finding the joy in it, finding the enjoyment, because otherwise it's hard enough creative, building up worlds from the imagination, making them consistent. It is harder than I think a lot of people realise, or it's just hard for me. I don't know. Maybe some people find it really easy, but it's always a challenge. And yeah, I think that was my point, really.
I love that. No, I love that. No, it's every author is different in so many ways, and that's why I love talking with so many people on this. My weekly little chats. It's because I learn from everyone who I've talked to, and hopefully maybe I've helped them. I don't know, but it is always just fun to hear other people's experiences, and because each of us has our own strengths and weaknesses, sometimes just talking these things through, you can help each other out, and we can all become better writers and reach new viewers / readers, because that's, an author's goal. That and just the joy of writing. I will admit that too. I'm that kind of person that I can't stop myself from writing. Even if I didn't try to do it as a career, I would still be writing because I love it. But that's...
Well, I've had a bit of burnout recently, and I promised myself that I wouldn't write until September. And since that promise, I've already written a short story. I'm working on another one. It's like I have to do it. I can't stop.
It's hard to because after a while, I have tried to take breaks, and I get that itch, the itch to write, and I'm feeling okay, yeah. I need to get back to it. But maybe it's also because I'm writing in a series, and I'm I really want to get to the next part. And I'm so excited.
You get really twitchy.
Yeah.
You get really antsy if you're not writing.
Oh, that's true. That is very true. So we are rounding the hour mark, so though we don't have to shut off right away, is there anything you want to talk about right now? Anything you want to tell people right now? Because I'll repost this on YouTube next week, and with all your tags below, so people can find you and follow and get new books. Yes. But is there anything you want to cover?
Well, I'm interested. I'm always interested in the process and I suppose people call it, whether you're a plotter or a pantser. I don't know if that's necessarily a good way of looking at things, but how much do you kind of pre-prepare, or what does your writing process look like?
I'm definitely one of those mixed people. I've heard the planter term. I don't know who comes up with these things, but yes, no, I'm a person who, when I conceive of an idea, I pretty much know early on, for the most part, how many books, since I'm a series writer, how many books are in the series, the main characters, the main points, the end goal, and probably some of the other kind of subplots in between before I even start trying to really delve into the world development. But from there, I've decided to kind of leave pretty much a loose flow. As I'm writing, my mind kind of sometimes jumps ahead, and if it does so, I'll take that pause, kind of make notes or write a sub-scene and kind of slot it away as earlier, saying, oh, this is a subplot I want to work in down the line. Just note that and get back to my work. But I allow my story to kind of ebb and flow a little bit on itself. For instance, the series, like I said, I just finished volume 12 draft of this series, and right at the ending, I knew where the next novella was going to lead, but I didn't know the twist at the end, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was as shocked as the characters, but I think that's fun too when something reveals itself to you, because that makes your own writing as exciting as it is, hopefully, for people to read your writing. So that's the way I work. How about yourself?
I had the same thing with my Ravenglass Chronicles. Is the way that book was meant to go, the last book, it didn't go that way at all. So there was a twist at the end that I realised, and it was only because the main character was in that place, and it's like, no, this is what this is actually. So, and then I went back to the first book, and it was already foreshadowed. So I was like, yes, yes. So it must have been working away in a subconscious somewhere. My process. This is the thing, I was saying about like not knowing how long it takes me to write a book. It's like every book I've written, I've been trying out different processes, and I've still not settled on one really.
I don't think you need to settle on one. You just do whatever's right for that particular book at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I've done really detailed outlines that are like 10,000 words long, and the way I'm working at the moment on my Assassin series is index cards, and I see it as a ever evolving outline. So I try to write more kind of thematically and based on the character's flaws, and so it's like there's a mixture of outlining because I kind of think of it in terms of story structure and plot points and all that kind of stuff, but it does change, and when a character behaves in a certain way that I didn't intend it to, it's like, I think, is that consistent? Does that work? Yes. Then it means that it kind of has to shift. And so the current book that I'm on now, I know what the ending is, and I've only outlined the first act, and that's it. So the rest of it is now up for grabs. So I'll write that, see how it goes. That's the plan.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Like kind of like what you're talking about with the crypt cards or your side notes. I use my technique. I don't know if there's no term for it, so I'm just going to create a term. It's rolling pages, where anytime I have one of those sporadic ideas or those scenes coming forward, or even my loose, sometimes I start out with like the high points, and then I start breaking them into like chapter by chapter high points and stuff like that. But all those loose notes for the book / series or whatever will be under my new text. So my new text is on top, and then the rolling pages. So it's always a cool thing when I open up a new chapter file and I have 14 pages already there. Right. Then I realize all those are my notes or my thoughts or my ideas, and it's not really 14 pages. But it's just a nice thing, because it's always, anytime I do use something, I delete it. And then anytime another thought comes in, I plug it in, and it's just right there. So that helps me, but that's, again, I can't say that helps everybody. Everybody has their own strategy of how they want to approach writing, what makes sense to them.
This is true. This is true. And I think that is one thing takeaway is whenever you hear writing advice, it's all subjective. Every writing rule you'll hear has been broken and broken well. Even the show don't tell. Like if you read 100 Years of Solitude, that is all telling.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And that's the thing is, I think when it comes to rules of writing, it is important to learn the rules. Then you have a choice to break them or not. I think that's the best approach. But that's just me coming from, my art side, because on this talk about art, my other job is being a painter, but no joke. But coming from the art side, it's good to know the history of art and the styles to then choose to what extent you want to veer away and everything. I think that does give you an extra value. Not everybody does it, obviously you don't have to, but I do think that's a good approach to anything creative, is know the rules and then choose how far you want to deviate from them.
Yeah, yeah. Do a Marcel Duchamp. There you go.
Yes.
Display. Well, do you want to write the equivalent of urinal? That's the question. So with your art stuff, then, I mean, how much? So I find this with my kind of, because I like to play music as my sort of side creation stuff that's got no stakes to it, let's say, and I don't know how much they kind of cross over. I mean, with your art thing, do you find that what you're doing in that crosses over to your writing, or are they like separate creative endeavors that occupy different parts of your brain or something?
I mean, they're both creative outlets, so you get that right side of your brain working in that sense. But yeah, they're very different. I do a very odd style of painting, and I focus on animal portraiture, predominantly pet painting. So very different from my epic fantasy. But what does connect them is my love of animals. And so a lot of my series deals with some kind of animal or creature element to them. And of course, in my art, they're predominantly 99.9% all about animals. So it's that love in my background with working with animals in various fields that kind of interconnects the two. Two different creative ways to kind of connect a third party. I don't know, it's a triangle right there somehow.
Yeah. So do you do portraits of your animal characters or anything like that for your world?
I have been asked that, but no, I haven't done that. I think it's because my style is just a certain way that it would be hard for me to take what I see in my head and put it down on paper, because especially when it comes to like animal portraiture, I base off people's photos. So I already have a good idea of proportions, and I don't have to like freehand it from the get-go. So my style doesn't necessarily list to be able to represent what I want, and nor would I want it to, because there are so many good artists out there, especially having seen the cover designers, wow, who just do these fabulous stuff. And I'm okay with saying I'm an artist. I probably could, but there are people who I know who that's their niche is cover design and all that, and I'll let them do that. Character art, which I realized recently was a thing. I didn't know character art that people like to get or trade or buy from authors. I would probably still go and hire someone else to do, sketches or drawings or paintings of my characters, because it's just not the style of art that I do. And I appreciate others people's level of skill.
Yeah. So maybe there's a opportunity for you to maybe write some of those, the cozy mysteries where you've got the cats as the main characters.
Yes. Well, you never know. That is true. That is true. I could always kind of dabble in that, but who knows? Yeah. In the future, anything is possible.
There's a way you can combine fantasy with a dog cozy or something. There you go.
I would probably at that point have to branch into a pen name, because I think that would be a little confusing at that point, branching that far away from my epic fantasy. It's already confusing enough. But you never know. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll branch into cozy fantasy with my pen names. Okay, I have one more comment popped in, said, heading back to work, thanks. Looking forward to reading our series. Woo! So, love it. Thank you for joining us. And actually, since we are hitting that, we've hit the hour and everything, any last comments you want to make about this? And you feel free to come back and do this again, because I love just chatting with authors. But yeah, any last comments, John, before you?
No, I think we've had a good chat. It's been cool because I've been following you on the TikTok for a while. I always enjoy your questions of the day. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been cool, and I enjoy doing this sort of stuff. So as I say, it is cool to see how other authors do stuff, because I just find it magical that we can do such different things and it all ends up as this, story, and that's what's important. That's why we're here, isn't it?
Absolutely love it. Well, thank you for coming out today. And, if you do want to join back in down the line when you're delving into your Viking fantasy or something else, just reach out again, because, again, I love catching up and letting other people know who you are and find you.
Awesome.
And again, I'll be resharing this on my YouTube channel next week. It's always about a week out. And I'll put all your lovely tags and website information below so people can find you easily and check out all your plethora of stories. But yes, again, thank you for coming out, and I will check in with you hopefully soon.
Take care, everyone.